Before I make this scenario, I am planning on making more anime stuff, like what if Goku was evil, and even making some commentary shorts to see if I can get some subscribers. With all that being said, let's get to the history part. This is a pretty interesting concept, and it's what if the Viking Age never ended? But first, what caused the Viking Age to die? Well, behind looking it up, there's multiple reasons, but Denmark, Sweden, and Norway converted to Christianity pretty much killed it. The Viking Ages lasted for this long, and eventually they died out and converted to Christianity. So in this alternate timeline, they never converted to Christianity. Now, there actually is a way for this to happen. You see, Europe was full of other religions that were not Christian. But Orthodoxy, Catholic, and even Muslims had a big foothold on Europe for a while. Muslims would lose their foothold, then regain one, but that's a story for another time. So how would this happen? Well, we're going to say that the Vikings stopped becoming raider-triber-like people, and instead united into a militaristic empire. They tried to do this with Britain and trying to take it over fully. However, they were never able to fully unite. Let's say in this alternate timeline, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway all unite much earlier, and then eventually unite into one kingdom. How likely is this? Well, I say it's unlikely for this to happen really soon, but it's not impossible. However, Greece was led by Alexander the Great, who, at one point in time, who managed to take over the Persian Empire. So, it's not that far-fetched when you really think about it. So let's say there's a great Viking general who manages to become king of a Viking nation, and his great military prowess has him unite all of the Vikings under one country, then take over Britannia and unite it under Viking law. Now, the Christians would still outnumber the Vikings because Britain would have more people, since Scandinavia doesn't have a lot of people in general. However, let's say the Vikings managed to convert the Christians, similar to how they were able to spread so fast. The reason they spread so fast is because, well, the Bible was just easy to pass along. Let's say the Vikings make a more organized religion. They still have the gods and stuff like that, it's just more organized, and install better churches and a head of faith. So they're able to unite Britannia under their religious law. And the Viking Empire spreads wide, taking over parts of Germany, France. But like Genghis Khan, when he dies, the Vikings split up into a bunch of different Viking kingdoms. What happens after that? Well, most likely the Pope would try to retake it under Christianity, calling a crusade. However, we don't want the Vikings to convert to Christianity. So let's say when the Pope does this, the Muslims use this to try to take over all of Spain. The Orthodox manage to spread up throughout the Caucasus, and other pagan religions defend the Vikings, and they push back against Catholicism and Catholic Church. Over time, the Catholic Church would slowly die out, and the Viking religion would remain supreme. Modern-day Britain, Ireland, Scandinavia, parts of Germany, Denmark, and France will be completely Viking, while Spain will be taken over by Muslim. And pagan religions will be much more natural, among more than just the Viking religion. Orthodoxy would survive and be the only form of Christianity left. Now, this would change politics and things that I can't even imagine. There were so many influential leaders. And considering that most of them are gone, and that there's new kingdoms in place of Britain, France, and all these others, I couldn't really predict all of this. So let's skip ahead. The Vikings discover Canada and the Americas. Since the Viking kingdoms aren't having major trouble here, like they were in our timeline, and the forced conversion of Christianity ironically actually delayed colonization, after hundreds of years of converting Christians, the Vikings decide to colonize Canada. They try to keep the word secret, and wars between the natives and Vikings begin. The Native Americans were just chilling when one day white men showed up, and they declared that their gods were right, and began to battle them. Native Americans heard of these words such as Zeus and Thor, and more Vikings came. Pretty soon other Viking nations heard, and Viking nations would colonize the North Americas. The South would belong to a different religion, a religion of the old Bible faith, Muslim. When Spain was united by Muslims, eventually they would take what is now known as Portugal too. Have the Muslim Iberia. This will form the Muslim Empire. The Viking empires and the Muslim empires would fight in the New World, and a new age of colonization would begin to spread. This world would be different. It would be a giant holy war between the Muslims and the Vikings. However, eventually, this would no longer be a holy war, but a war just land and resources. Now, with all that being said, let's get to the culture and languages of each society. The Viking colonies and their people would most likely be a mix of English, French, Danish, and Swedish. Now, since they all split up into different kingdoms, I think the Danish and Swedish probably would have mixed the languages with the French and British, but not too much. Similar to how Brittany and England mix languages there a bit. The people there would be hard-working Vikings who slaughter and destroy. Colonies would eventually start to fight among themselves as raiding became less popular. They would begin to raid the Native Americans, but eventually the Vikings would lose their raiding ways, and the colonies would become much similar to the British and French colonies. But instead of being Catholic or Protestant, they worshipped the Viking religion. The disease and other things like that would still wipe out the natives. The natives would be destroyed and pushed back even more fiercely, as the Vikings slaughtered the natives, taking their land, similarly how the Europeans did in our timeline. Meanwhile, the Muslims would act just like Spain and Portugal, taking over South America and slaughtering them under a caliphate, forcing them into their religion, pushing them forward and forward and forward. Now, it's impossible for me to predict how long this Muslim empire would last. The reason the Spanish Empire lost all their colonies was Napoleon took over Spain during Napoleonic Wars. But that's not going to happen. And the world is so different now that really, I think it might be time to end this scenario. Sorry it was a bit short, but hey, what can you do? Vikings are cool. What do you think would happen if the Viking Age is never ended? And who do you think would win the Holy War, the Muslims or the Vikings? Let me know down in the comments below.